welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Ollie. I sew clothes, quilt, embroider, have a particular soft spot for cross stitch and an ever-growing collection of sewing machines. They just seem to multiply. But I'm not here to talk about any of that today. If you've been following my channel, you'll know that I've been doing a series on how to get a treadle working and the different parts that go into making a treadle machine. And the next video, today's video, is on how to sew with the treadle. Now I thought what would make a good video would be not just me sitting here sewing straight lines, but if we had a project that could be a sew along where everybody could join in. The project that I've picked is one that can be hand stitched. It can be stitched on any type of sewing machine, so it doesn't matter if you haven't got a treadle, and it can be accomplished equally successfully by someone who's never used a sewing machine before and somebody that's been using one for years. It really is an inclusive project, and what we're going to be making today is face masks. So without further ado, let's get right into the sewing. I've put together some of the items that you'll need to work on this sew along with me. The first thing obviously that you'll need to do is download a pattern from the internet. Now there are plenty of patterns available. I got this one from thecraftyquilter.com. I'll put the link in the description box below. As you can see, it's a two-part mask. You've got the external piece and the internal piece. You'll need a safety pin. I'll show you why a little later. You'll need two different designs of 100% cotton. Now the reason why we use cotton is because it's a natural fibre, it's breathable, but more importantly it doesn't pill. You need to avoid fabrics like wool, flannel or fleece, because those fabrics have a tendency to do what we call pill, which means little bits of the fibre kind of bobble up and fall off, and what you'll find you'll be doing as you're walking along doing your shopping is you'll be breathing those fibres in, which is something that you don't want to do. And as any of you will know, if you've ever wrapped a woolen scarf around your face in really cold weather, as you breathe the wool gets wet. So again, that's something else that you don't really want next to your face with a face mask. Okay, you'll need either sewing clips or pins. You'll need some way of marking your fabric. I've got fabric pencils. They either come shaped like a pencil or with a little handy brush on the top. You can use fabric marker pens. Anything really that you can wash out is ideal for marking fabric. What I tend to do is whatever you're planning on using, test it out on scrap fabric to start with to make sure that it doesn't bleed through, it doesn't show to the right side, and that it actually does come out. You'll also need fabric scissors for cutting out the fabric. If you've got some, pinking shears are useful. I'll show you why a bit later on, but don't worry too much if you haven't got pinking shears, because there's a way around it. And obviously, last but not least, elastic. Now this is a 1/4 inch elastic. I got this from a website. I'll put the link in the description box below. It's an Amazon link. Obviously, as an Amazon affiliate, I do get a bit of commission back on every qualified sale, and it just keeps me in chocolate biscuits, to be honest. But yeah, make sure you use elastic that's designed for sewing clothes or for sewing projects. Don't try to use elastic out of the inside of a bungee that you use for tying down stuff to the back of a trailer, because it's the wrong kind of elastic. So make sure it's sewing elastic, 1/4 inch. When you've decided which is going to be your inside fabric and which is going to be your outside fabric, you're ready to start cutting. Now what you need to do with your fabric is you fold it in half. Now it doesn't matter if you fold it in half with the right sides together or the wrong sides together. All we're looking for at this stage for this project is that you've got two pieces of fabric folded together like that. Okay, the next thing obviously is you need to place your pattern piece on your fabric. Now I'm starting with the internal part of the face mask, so you just pop it wherever it will fit really. I'm going to pop it there. Now the one thing that you want to avoid is the actual fold of the fabric, because we don't want to cut the pieces out and find that they're attached. We want them separate. So make sure wherever you put your pattern piece, it's in the body of the fabric and not on the fold. When you're happy with the positioning of the pattern, you're ready to start pinning. Now I'm using pins on this project because it's going to be easier to get to the parts that are in the middle of the fabric. I have got a video that I've done a review on plastic clips, which I'll link to in the description box below, but on this particular project, because you can't get clips on any of these sides, it's easier to use the pins. So let's just get straight into it and start pinning. Now when you're pinning, try and keep the fabric flat to the surface that you're on, and make sure that it goes through both layers of the fabric. So try and pick a surface that you don't mind scratching with the end of a pin. Okay. When you get to that stage, you're ready to start cutting. So using fabric scissors, it's just a case of cutting around the outside. Now all of those steps, you do exactly the same ones for the external face mask pieces. Okay, when you've cut your pieces out, you should have 2 pieces for the external part of the mask and 2 pieces for the internal part of the mask, and as you can see, they're mirror images. The next thing that we need to do is going back to the pattern pieces, sorry. You'll notice that on both there's markings that we need to transfer to the fabric. Now what I'm going to do is, starting with one of the internal pieces, turn it over to the wrong side, line up your pattern piece with the edge of the fabric, and then using your preferred method of marking, in this case I'm going to use the fabric pencil, it's simply a matter of drop the pattern piece down a little bit until you see the fabric, and then just mark level with that line. Now what we're actually marking on the fabric here is the 1/4 inch line, which in the next step I'll show you what to do with that. But what you need to do obviously for both internal pieces is use this one to mark both pieces for the internal face mask, and then on the external piece we swap over to this pattern piece and transfer these markings to the fabric. Actually I'll use the other one because it's the right way around. There you go. And again, it's just a case of lining up with the edge of the fabric and then just drawing level with those markings. And the way to do this one is you literally just do it upside down like that, because the lines will be in exactly the same place. And now that we've done that, the next stage is the 1/4 inch line that we've transferred to both the external and the internal pieces. We need to fold over on that line and then finger press to hold it down like that, and you do that on all 4 pieces. Now that we've got all the equipment together and we've cut the fabric pieces out, we're ready to start sewing. Now what you'll need obviously is some thread for your machine. Ideally you should be using matching thread, but I'm using a contrasting colour so that you be able to see what I'm doing slightly easier. Because this is a video, everything turns out darker than what it really is, so hopefully using white thread will make it a lot easier for you. Now the first thing that we need to do is obviously set the machine up. Now I've already got some bobbins with white thread on, but I thought it would be a good idea to show you how to thread a bobbin on a Singer 27, because if you're ever thinking of getting one of these vintage machines, it's going to be useful to know. So the first thing you need to do is pop your thread on the thread spool, bring the thread forward to the front of the machine to put it through that little thread guide, and then bring it to the back of the machine. Disconnect your needle, because you remember in the previous video I said we want to stop the needle moving up and down so you don't end up with a thread mess on the underneath of the machine. move your bobbin winding mechanism onto the belt, and then you grab your bobbin. Now I'm going to be using one of the original bobbins for this. This one came with Grandma, so I'm assuming that this one's from 1912. You'll notice they don't have any grooves or slots or anything to put the thread through, so what we're going to have to do is grab the thread, wrap it round a few times to secure it, and then, this is the fiddly bit, you put it across the top of bobbin and then trap it between here and this part of the bobbin winder, and then that should keep it secure while you start to wind. So if you bear with me for a moment, because that bit is a bit fiddly, just pop it in there and then pull on that one so that it just slots into place. Oops. And it's fallen off the end. Just a second. Oops. It is incredibly fiddly, this bit. Got you. Now hopefully that thread's still jammed in between this bit and the bobbin. Then what you do with the thread, you have a guide at the top of the mechanism and one at the bottom that you just need to put the thread through, and then just take up any slack by just gently turning your cotton reel. Right, the next thing you do is the same as if you were actually sewing with Grandma, is you turn the hand wheel until you get your pitman arm at the top of the band wheel, and then you can start taking over with your foot pedal. If you want to know how to work a treadle, how to actually get that band wheel moving, I have a video on that which I'll put a link in the description box for you. If this doesn't start winding the cotton onto the bobbin as you're treadling, it'll be because that thread's come out. So what you do is you just have to readjust it and fiddle with it and try and get that thread trapped in that mechanism again and start over. Now when you're happy that you've got enough thread on your bobbin, it's a good idea to finish when you get to the right side, and you'll find out why in the next step. Once you've got the thread on your bobbin, the next thing that you need to do, making sure that the thread's coming off at the top of the bobbin to the right, you slot the bobbin into the bullet case. There's a little groove on the side that you draw the bobbin thread down into, and then, this is the tricky bit, what you do is you get it to the very bottom of the bobbin, you pull down until it slots into there, and then pull it straight up, and what will happen is the thread will end up in this part of the bobbin casing. When you've got it there, what you do is you just click it into the machine like that. To get the bobbin back out, you just push down on the pointed bit and it comes out like that. The next thing that we need to do, obviously, is thread the top part of the machine. You've got your thread on your thread spool, you can take it across to the thread guide at the front, down to your tension discs, around, up to this little lever here, and then there's a little slot that it needs to go through on the faceplate, down to this little guide next to the needle clamp, and then through the needle. Now I've already threaded the needle because it takes me ages to do that, so you'd have had to have talked between yourselves for at least 3 days. Now, having got to this stage, what we need to do now is get the bobbin thread from under the machine to on top of the machine, and to do that you very loosely hold the top thread in your hand to one side, turn the hand wheel until it connects with the bobbin thread, and then you just pull gently oops, I've dropped it, until the loop comes up from the bobbin thread, and that's how you get the bobbin up. Whoops. There are two things that I get really irritated with Grandma over. Number one, it's a silly bobbin design, and number two, she's a treadle, which means if you take your feet off the pedal, the pitman arm keeps moving, which means she goes down inside there when you don't want her to, which is really annoying, but hey, everybody's got their faults. Right, so the machine is now threaded up and we're ready to go. So the next thing that we do is we start actually sewing the face masks. Now you remember in a previous step what we did was we folded over the 1/4 inch so you get a nice smooth edge like that. What we're going to do now is sew that down on each of the fabric pieces. So we'll get into that. I'll just pop this under the needle, and Grandma's fallen down into the hole again. Just pop the needle down there a minute. There we go. Right, now to sew on any sewing machine, what you do is you don't have to pull it, you put pressure on it or anything like that. You lightly hold the top and the bobbin thread in one of your hands like that. Now the reason why you do that is so that when you start to sew, the threads don't get pulled into the underneath of the machine, because you'll get bird's nests. Okay, so with the needle in the fabric and gently holding the threads behind, we can start to sew. Now what I do is I just take a couple of stitches with the hand wheel and then I stop. And the reason I do that is because Grandma only goes forwards, she doesn't do reverse, which could be another irritating thing about her. She's an old lady, she's allowed to be irritating. Anyway, what I'm going to need to do, because I don't have reverse, is leaving the needle in the fabric, I'm going to lift the presser foot, I'm going to turn the piece around so it's backwards if you like, put the presser foot down, and then using the hand wheel just do another couple of stitches back the way I've just come. Leaving the needle in the fabric, I lift the presser foot, turn the fabric back to the original direction and put the presser foot down. Now what I've done there is what's known as back tacking or back stitching. Now that's something that you can do on every sewing machine, and what it does is it locks in your stitches. So every time you start a seam, do a couple of stitches, push your reverse button and then do a couple of stitches backwards, and then you can start to sew, and what that does is it stops your seams from unravelling. So we're going to just start sewing the seam now. So get your wheel moving, and when you've got the wheel moving you can start pedalling with your foot, and then to stop you just grab the hand wheel. Okay, keep the needle in the fabric, lift your presser foot, turn, put your presser foot down, using your hand wheel just do a couple of stitches back over your stitching line. Take your needle out of the work, lift your presser foot and pull your work to the back of the machine, and there's the stitching on both sides. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do that on all of the pieces, so let's get on with the next one. Put the foot down, grab hold of the threads gently, no pressure, and put your needle down, and then we can start to sew. Using the hand wheel, just a couple of stitches and stop, stay, turn it round, press the foot down, go back over your stitches to do the back tack, press the foot up, make sure your needle's in the fabric and turn back to the original direction. Now the reason why we keep the needle in the fabric when we do that is because it keeps the fabric still, it keeps it over the feed dog, so you don't have to keep repositioning the fabric. And the technical term for what we've just done is called pivot. We pivot around the needle. So now that we've back tacked, we can turn our wheel and get the treadle working and stitch the straight stitch and stop at the end. Okay, press foot up, leave the needle in the fabric and turn it right round, down, and just a couple of threads, oops, to hold that in place. Now that we've done the 1/4 inch turnover on all the pieces, it's time to sew the face mask together. And how we do that is we'll start with the external pieces. You need to place them right sides together, like so, and line up the edge that we'll be stitching, which is this curved edge here. So make sure your points are level, oops, and just tease it so that it's level all the way down, like that. And then using your clips, you just hold them in place with a clip, and then you start to sew. Oh, move those over there for a minute. Take your needle up a little so I can get in there. Okay, now one of the good things about the feet on Grandma is this side of the foot here is 1/4 inch, so I can use that to make sure I've got a 1/4 inch seam allowance going all the way along there. Modern machines have got seam allowance guide where you've got different numbers across here that you can follow to keep your seams nice and straight, or you could do what we did previously and actually mark the 1/4 inch onto the fabric and just stitch along the line. Okay, so just gently holding the threads. Now turn the wheel a couple of times and pivot and turn it all the way around, and then just do a couple back over the top. Leave the needle in, press the foot up, pivot back round, and then just start to sew. Okay, so it looks like that, and you do exactly the same for the internal pieces. So you put them right sides together, hold them together with a clip, like that, and start to sew. There you go. This next stage is where pinking shears come in handy, so I'll just grab them for a moment. Okay, what we're going to do on the curved edge is we're going to just snip with the pinking shears all the way across, making sure not to go through the stitching line, or you'll end up having to stitch it again. And what you'll see is happening is as you snip, you're getting like a zigzag effect on the edge of your fabric. And what that's good, oh, I missed a bit. What that's good for is, because it's a curved edge, we want it to lie nice and flat when we turn it the right way out. And because we've now cut into the fabric, it's going to allow that fabric to stretch, so that when we turn it to the right side, it's just that much easier and it'll sit that much flatter. Now if you haven't got any pinking shears, don't panic. I'll just get rid of these for a moment. There is a way of doing that without using pinking shears. So if I just grab the other face mask section for a moment, what we're going to do is we're just going to use normal scissors. Now I'd recommend using slightly smaller ones for this, but these will work just the same. And what you do is you just literally snip into the curve like that, making sure again not to go anywhere near your stitching line so that you don't cut straight through it, and you just do that all the way up. And if you want to, in some places you can actually cut little triangles like that, and you do that all the way, and this will do exactly the same as your pinking shears. And all it does is it allows that round bit of fabric to stretch out so that it can sit nice and flat. And this is called clipping the curves. There you go, and it goes all the way to the top. Now that we've got both sides of the external and both sides of the internal face mask stitched together, we need to add the inside to the outside, and to do that we turn both pieces so that they're right sides together. Okay, so that's the right side of the right side of the outside, and that's the right side of the inside. You with me so far? Okay, we're gonna clip them at the top so that the seam line stays level, and then we just line up the sides like so. Oops, a bit high. There, that's better. And then just pop a clip on that side and pop a clip on the other side. There you go. Okay, and when you're happy with it, you just pop it under the needle and we'll sew. Just get the threads out of the way a minute. Remember to hold your threads before you put the needle in the fabric. Take a couple of stitches with your hand wheel. It's a good idea when you get close to the point to slow down a little bit so that you can make sure you get a stitch level with the seam line and level coming down the other side as well, so you get a nice crisp point. So I'm just going to use the hand wheel just to get me up to that point. I'm going to leave the needle in the fabric, lift the press foot and pivot as we did at the start of the seam, and then it's just a matter of following it through down the other side. And stopping at the end. Right, now that we've got the top stitched, we do exactly the same across the bottom. Oops, a daisy. Stop it. Okay, so when you've got them nicely stitched together, it's just a case of trimming your threads, and then we turn it inside out, or the right way out, depending on your perspective. There you go. You've got the outside and the inside. Now the next thing that we need to do is, I'll just push that point out a little bit better, we need to do what's called top stitching. Now the reason why we do top stitching is because we want the two sides of the mask to stay where they are. We don't want this one coming out over the top of the external face mask. So what we're going to do is we're going to stitch across the top of the face mask and across the bottom, just to hold those two pieces down. Now top stitching is usually done on the right side, but I'm going to do the top stitching or under stitching on this side, because what I want to do is make sure that I catch this and make a nice neat edge on that as well. So here we go. Threads back over there. That's it. Don't fall down yet. No, she's gonna go. And then we do exactly the same across the bottom. Oops, a daisy. Grandma, pack it in. Right, and there you have the face mask. Now what we need to do is make the casings for the elastic, and to do that we literally just Move the threads out of the way, I'll get a pair of scissors on that. That's it. We fold it over and then we stitch across there, and we do that on both sides. And there you have it. That's the face mask with the elastic casings now sewn in. Now it's simply a matter now of tidying up a little bit, getting rid of some of these loose threads, and then I'll show you the next stage. For this next stage, you're going to need your elastic and your safety pin. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to cut some of the elastic. Now the actual pattern that I'm using from Crafty Quilters will tell you the length of elastic that you'll need for these masks. Because I've made them before, know that I need about 7 inches, so I'm just going to measure out 7 inches and chop it there. So it's about there. And then using the elastic that I've just chopped, I'll chop another one. Just line it up like that and just chop it level. So you've got 2 pieces the same length. Now with your safety pin, you thread it through one side of the elastic, and then you put your safety pin through the elastic casing and then just push it through and the elastic will follow it. Now when you're doing things like that, always make sure to hold on to the other end or you'll just pull it straight through. Okay, so just fiddle with it a little bit and it just goes through like that. Now you do that on both sides. When you've got your elastic through both sides, all you need to do now is temporarily tie a knot in it. What that allows you to do is it allows you to put the mask on and adjust it to see if you need to tighten it up a little bit, and then when you're happy with the fit you can secure the fastening a little bit better with a machine stitch across the ends. And then what you do is you just push the elastic fastening inside the casing so that you can't see it, and then that's pretty much the project finished. And here's a finished mask. As I say, what you do, the temporary knots allow you to adjust the elastic until you get a nice fit. If you find out that the 7 inches wasn't big enough, just cut a slightly longer one and re-thread the elastic through the casings. When you're happy with it, secure it with a machine stitch across the end, and then just turn the fastening so that it's inside the casing, and that's all there is to it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I really hope you enjoyed the sew along as well. I'll leave a link in the description box below to the products that I used as part of this sew along, and I'll also leave links to the other videos in the series. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to my channel and hit the little bell so that you get notified next time I upload a new video. And thanks ever so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.